Cada cabeza es un mundo, or every head's a world, literally means that each individual has their own perspective and way of seeing things. English education. Chapter 6, English education, to some extent fosters the idea that students' personal arguments are more valuable than formal analysis of lessons presented. I think the story is engaging for students and to help facilitate student-centered learning. Students could create a house foldable where they decorate the outside of the foldable and on the inside answer questions about the story that relate to their personal ideas and interpretations. Example of house foldable. Students could answer the following questions by interpreting the story: evidence that supports the narrator and father's grief, evidence that the father's actions are not justified, two examples of irony within the story, verbal or situational. How would you describe the relationship between the young boy and his father? Fostering engaging lessons. Education should be about the development of the whole person, one who has the capacity for clear thought and compassion and the recognition of interrelatedness of life. Yagowski, page 280. Considering this quote, it is especially important that students take a good look at characteristics of the mother's bipolar disorder in the story, as it depicts the highs and lows the mother experienced. For instance, life is an adventure. La vida vale ser vivida. Skinner, page 109. This quote showcases how the mother was hopeful and lively despite her mental illness. The world in her eyes was wild and meant to be seen as an adventure. This is in stark contrast to the idea that she could have possibly died by suicide during one of her lows, but perhaps her mind saw things much darker. Students could give examples of situational irony within the text that discusses how the mother's positivity is shadowed by the negative events that happen next following her death. She sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the rug. I knew she had begun to descend into her blackness. Skinner, page 110. This shows the contrast between the mother's extreme high versus her lows. Students would be able to describe how this makes them feel in regards to her death. To what end do we help students learn to write and read so that they can succeed in school, find jobs, enjoy reading, or acquire cultural knowledge? What ultimately are we educating our students for? Yagowski, page 275. I finally came to realize my father has a whole separate world in his head too, a world now revolving around this thing he calls our adventure. Skinner, page 118. This quote reveals how the father believes he is doing the best he can for his son by smuggling drugs. He believes he can provide a brighter future for his son and sees it as a bonding experience rather than acknowledging the dangers of the business he's getting them into. Students would be able to inference the broken relationship between the father and the son, considering the father is described as having ojos de vidrio. The students could also relate how being mixed might affect how the narrator identifies and if that has any instances of discomfort between how the narrator feels towards his father. Reader response. Upon reading the story Every Head is a World by Jose Skinner, I was immediately shocked by how a 13-year-old is being pulled into such a chaotic lifestyle or adventure as his father calls it. The boy describes his father as gringo with ojos de vidrio, and ultimately that is what is helping the young boy and his father get away with smuggling drugs from Mexico, since the father has white privilege. His mother, who was Mexican, suffered from bipolar disorder with manic highs and lows. It was sad to know that there was a fight between the father and his mother right before the day she passed away, which was due to an accident at work. Whether or not it was an accident or self-inflicted is still up for debate. Seems like the story focuses on grief of the father who first turned to excessive shopping and overeating, and now has become obsessed with this new adventure for himself and his son that involves being drug smugglers. Cada cabeza es un mundo. I relate to this because I feel it is true that everyone has their own worlds in their head, and that no one really experiences but them. Nadie sabe lo que hay en una olla más que la cuchara que la menea. No one knows what's in the pot than the spoon that mixes it, meaning no one truly knows what's going on in someone's life or mind unless they are the person themselves.